The
I
night
got
I
these for
agreed
you.
to take my
Oh, they're
brother's place on
beautiful.
a
Thank
blind
you.
date, I told
I'm glad you
myself
like
it
them.
meant nothing.
I love
Just
them.
dinner, just small talk, just pretending for 2 hours that my life wasn't held together by grocery lists, unpaid bills, and a 6-year-old girl who still cried herself to sleep some nights, asking for her mother. I never imagined that one quiet question from a stranger would tear open everything I had tried so hard to keep buried. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet miracles that happen when broken people dare to show up anyway, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and whether you believe love can find us when we least expect it. My younger brother, Asan, was always the charming one. Confident, successful, the kind of man who could turn a random coffee shop conversation into a phone number in under 5 minutes. I was the opposite, a widower at 34, a father before I ever felt ready to be one alone, a man who measured his days in school drop-offs and microwave dinners. That afternoon, Asan called me in a panic. He had been set up on a blind date by a colleague, a woman he described as intelligent and kind, someone he didn't want to disappoint. But a last-minute work emergency had trapped him out of town. He begged me to go in his place, just to explain the situation politely and save him the embarrassment. At first, I laughed. The idea felt absurd. I hadn't been on a date since before my wife passed away 3 years earlier. Even then, our dates had been simply cheap biryani from the corner restaurant, long walks under flickering streetlights, dreams whispered between us about the family we would build. Now, the thought of sitting across from another woman felt like betrayal mixed with exhaustion. But Asan kept insisting. "Just show up," he said. "Be honest. Have dinner. Leave." I should have said no. Instead, I looked at my daughter Hera asleep on the couch, her small fingers still wrapped around a crayon. I thought about how small my world had become. Maybe stepping outside it, even for one evening, wouldn't hurt. So I went. The restaurant was one of those quiet, candlelit places where everything feels too polished for someone like me. I had borrowed Asan's blazer, one size too fitted around my shoulders, and I kept adjusting the sleeves as if they might hide my nervousness. My palms were damp. My heart felt heavier than it should for something so simple. She was already there when I arrived. She wasn't what I expected. There was no dramatic entrance, no dazzling smile meant to impress. She sat by the window, her posture straight but not stiff, her hands wrapped around a glass of water as if grounding herself. Her name was Mira. She had soft eyes that seemed to observe more than they revealed. When I introduced myself and explained the situation that I was his older brother, that he couldn't make itch didn't seem offended. If anything, there was a flicker of relief in her expression, as though she had been bracing herself for something worse. We ordered dinner. The first few minutes felt like a job interview neither of us wanted. I told her about my work at a small accounting firm. She shared that she worked at a community library, organizing reading programs for children. There was something gentle in the way she described her job, like she found comfort in helping others find stories. Then she asked about my family. I hesitated. It would have been easy to keep it vague, to say I lived with relatives or alone, but something in her gaze felt steady, patient. So I told her the truth. I told her about Hera, about how she loved drawing rainbows even when the sky outside was gray. I told her about losing my wife to a sudden illness, about the nights I sat on the kitchen floor after putting my daughter to bed because I didn't have the strength to cry in front of her. The words surprised me as they came out. I hadn't spoken about it like that to anyone outside my family. Most people avoided the topic. It made them uncomfortable. But Mira didn't look away. She listened. There was no pity in her eyes, just attention, real, undivided attention. And then, after a quiet pause, she asked the question that changed everything. "Does anyone take care of you?" It wasn't dramatic. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't lean forward with intensity. She asked it softly, almost as if she was afraid the question itself might break me. But it did. No one had asked me that since my wife passed away. Everyone praised me for being strong, for being a good father, for holding everything together. They brought food during the funeral, offered polite condolences, and then slowly returned to their own lives. No one had asked if I was tired. No one had asked if I was lonely. No one had asked who I leaned on when the weight became too much. Her question echoed in my chest long after she said it. I tried to answer casually, to brush it off. I said I was fine, that I managed, that my daughter was my strength. But she didn't nod and move on. She simply said that strength doesn't mean we don't need someone to sit beside us sometimes. Something inside me shifted. For the first time in years, I felt seen not just as a father, not just as a widower, but as a man who still carried wounds. The rest of the evening flowed differently. The tension eased. We talked about small things, favorite books, childhood memories, the comfort of rainy days. But beneath it all, there was that question lingering like a quiet promise. When dinner ended, I expected it to be the last time I saw her. After all, I wasn't the man she had agreed to meet. I thanked her for her kindness and apologized again for the unusual circumstances. To my surprise, she smiled and said she was glad he hadn't come. I walked home that night feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not love, not even hope exactly, just possibility. The next morning, Hassan called, eager for details. When I told him how the evening went, he was silent for a long moment. Then he laughed and said maybe the blind date had been meant for me all along. I dismissed it. Life wasn't a movie. Things didn't align so neatly, but 3 days later, I received a message from an unknown number. It was Mira. She wrote that she had enjoyed our conversation and wondered if I might like to have coffee sometime. No pressure, no expectations. My first instinct was to say no. Dating felt complicated enough. Dating as a single father felt nearly impossible. There were school schedules, doctor appointments, bedtime routines. My life wasn't spontaneous or glamorous. It was messy and loud and full of responsibility. But I thought about her question, does anyone take care of you? So I said yes. Our second meeting was simpler. A small cafe near the library where she worked. I brought Hera with me because I couldn't find a babysitter. I warned Mira beforehand, expecting her to change her mind. She didn't. Hera was shy at first, clinging to my hand, studying Mira with cautious eyes. But when Mira knelt down and asked about the crayon drawing Hera insisted on carrying everywhere, something softened. Within minutes, they were talking about colors and favorite stories. I watched them from across the table, my coffee growing cold. I felt fear creeping in. Not fear of rejection, but fear of hope. Hope had hurt me once before. It had been taken from me without warning. But Mira never tried to replace anything. She never tried to step into a role that wasn't hers. She simply showed up. She asked Hera about school. She asked me about my day. She noticed when I looked tired and quietly suggested we reschedule instead of pushing through. Slowly, the walls I had built began to crack. The real challenge wasn't society's whispers or relatives' raised eyebrows. It wasn't even balancing time. The hardest battle was inside me. Guilt followed me like a shadow. On nights when I found myself smiling at a message from her, I felt like I was betraying the memory of my wife. On days when Hera laughed with Mira, I worried I was confusing my daughter's heart. One evening, as Hera slept and the house was finally quiet, I looked at an old photo of my wife. I realized something that made my chest ache differently. Loving again didn't erase what we had. It didn't replace her. It honored the part of me she had once brought to life, a part capable of loving deeply. Mira never demanded answers about our future. She never pressured me for promises. But she continued to ask small, quiet questions that forced me to look inward. Was I living or just surviving? Was I teaching my daughter resilience or teaching her that pain should close us off from the world? Months passed. One Sunday afternoon, we went to the park. Hera ran ahead toward the swings, her laughter bright against the wind. Mira stood beside me, watching her. There was no grand confession, no dramatic declaration, just peace. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone in my responsibility. I didn't feel like I had to be unbreakable. I turned to Myra and thanked Hernet for loving me, not for loving my daughter, but for asking that question on a night when I was pretending to be someone else. She said sometimes the right question is more important than the right answer. If this story is touching your heart so far, take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might need the reminder that it's okay to open up again. And before we reach the end, I have one small request. Comment the word hope below if you believe broken chapters can still lead to beautiful endings. A year after that first blind date, I found myself back at the same restaurant, not in a borrowed blazer this time, not pretending to be anyone else. Hera sat between us, proudly swinging her legs under the table. Mira held my hand gently, as if asking without words whether I was ready. I was. Life didn't magically become perfect. There were still hard days, memories that stung, fears that resurfaced. But there was also laughter echoing through the house again. There were shared responsibilities, shared silences, shared dreams. And sometimes, late at night, when the world finally grew quiet, Mira would rest her head on my shoulder and ask how I was really doing. For the first time in years, I could answer honestly. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. If this story moved you even a little, if it reminded you that even the smallest act of empathy can change someone's entire direction, please like, comment, and share this video. Your support helps stories like this reach the people who need them most. And subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us we are never as alone as we think. Because sometimes, all it takes to change everything is one quiet question.